everyone, welcome to the second installment of There's a Book in My Nook. Hopefully you'll see that we're getting better as we're trying this new format, and today we're in a different place. We're trying to see if maybe the sound is a little bit better here. So we're going to start off with my first book this week, and it is Split Second by Casey West. And this is the second in her series. The first book is Pivot Point, which is this one, and I've already reviewed that a long time ago and really liked it. So when this book came out, I definitely wanted to read it. And this starts off kind of where the first one left off with Addison. And Addison, if you remember, or if you haven't read the first book, she has the ability to see into the future, but in a weird way, only when presented with a choice. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're trying to decide to go on vacation to two different places. She can search and see the outcome of if you go to either place. I think that's kind of a cool talent, because how many times have we always wondered what would have happened if we would have taken a different path? So for this one, she cannot remember the results of what her search was. She chose one path, lived it out, and she had her friend, which also has an ability, because they live in a compound where everyone has abilities, away from the normal world. Her friend has the ability to erase memories. So Addison asked her friend Layla to erase the memory of the other search that she had taken, so she wouldn't know what had happened if she didn't choose the one that she did. She chose the path that she did because, well, I don't want to tell you, because then if you haven't read the first book, you won't know. But something disastrous happens in one path, and it makes her choose a different path. And in doing so, she has to forget about the love that she met and the guy that she was with. So in this one, she's going to visit her dad on the holidays, and she runs into the same guy that she had fallen in love with if she had taken a different path. But some of her memories are still there of that search, and she can, not enough to know exactly what happened, but she feels like she knows him. So they start getting to know each other and being friends. And Layla is also in this one, where the other one you just had a little bit. This one goes back and forth chapter to chapter, one chapter about Addison and the next chapter about Layla. Layla's trying to enhance her abilities, so not only can she erase memories, but she can restore memories that the government has erased, because in their compound, the people there have abilities to do things to people that maybe they don't want, like erase their memories. So she's trying to enhance her ability as well. So you go back and forth between the two, learning about Layla. Layla's dad is he's telepathic or telekinesis. I'm not for sure which one. Telepathic. So he can read everybody's thoughts. It's so much for him that he has to take suppressors, because he just hears thoughts all the time, and it kind of is like being a drug addict on these suppressors to keep him from hearing everyone's thoughts. He is not a nice guy. He's mean to Layla and to her siblings, and she's kind of the one in charge, because her mom always has to work double shifts to be able to support them, because her dad can't hold a job because of his ability. And Addison, when you switch over to her, when she's on vacation, she finds out some things about her family that her dad and her mom have been keeping from her. And she finds out there's a lot more to the normal world than what she knew. So she's trying to have her memories restored. I'm not going to tell you if Layla can restore her memories or not. You'll have to read it. But it's a really good book, and I like the premises of what if you had taken a different choice. And if you like books about looking into the future, I have several other recommendations for you. There is a movie called Sliding Doors, and this is with Gwyneth Paltrow, and it's about if she gets on this train, what happens if she gets on it, and what happens if she doesn't. So for a movie version, something similar to this, you could try Sliding Doors. We don't have it here at the library, but you can request it. There's also the book Dark Visions, and this is by L.J. Smith, who also wrote The Secret Circle and The Vampire Diaries. And this is about a girl who has the ability to see the future, and about this kind of like school where she's sent, where everybody has powers. We don't have this book, but you can get it on request also. And then there's also The Future of Us, which I really want to read this one. After I read what it's about, I think it's very cool. This is about two kids in 1996, right when the internet's starting to become popular. They get on the internet for the first time, and when they do, somehow they get into Facebook, which hasn't even been created yet, and they see profiles of themselves 15 years into the future. And so they can, every time they can get on, they can find out stuff about the future of them and about future of us, about what happens. So I think that's kind of a cool book, and I would really like to try this one. So those are all similar books to the one that I told you about. I know you got questions, so go ahead.
I don't know if that's such a good idea.
Knowing two different paths or knowing the future at all?
Knowing the future and knowing two different paths, because I think you have to live with the choices that you make.
I know, but it sure would be nice to know you're making the right one. She can only go.
But I'm sure there's pros and cons to each choice.
Right. And she can only do it 6 to 8 weeks into the future. It can only go that far. She can't go all the way. It's because she's developing her powers. Whether she'll eventually be able to go farther, I don't know. But right now, it's like 6 to 8 weeks into each choice that she searches.
Yeah.
But I mean, so many times you wonder, what if I
now,
had done
have you
this?
seen the movie?
Sliding Doors? No, I
you
haven't. But I heard it was good.
I haven't heard of it.
But I really liked this book just because, I mean, I've read other books about seeing in the future, but none about where it's just two choices. And that's the only way she can search. She can't just look to someone's future and see their whole future. They have to say, okay, here's the premise. I have two choices. What happens if I take algebra, or what happens if I take geometry? Then she can search those two choices. Or what happens if I choose boy A or I choose boy B to go to prom with? She can search those two choices.
So can she only do one at a time, or can she do both?
No, she does. What she does is when she searches, she goes into one, and it's actually like she's there, and she thinks she's there 6 weeks, but she's only there a matter of like an hour, where she's like in this state where she's searching. But to her, it's like she lived that entire 6 weeks experience. If it's herself. Now, if it's somebody else, it's like she's watching it from afar, but the whole 6 weeks of it. And then she'll come back, and then she'll search the other way. And then she has the two.
But you don't know what happens after the 6 weeks of either choice.
She can't go farther than that because she's only, I think, 16 in the book, 17. So she hasn't, I mean, I don't know how far she'll eventually get to go with her because her abilities are progressing. One of the things that she finds in this book, she also has the ability to slow time down. So like if somebody's falling off something, she can slow it down enough to maybe save them or stop something from falling. And that's something she didn't know she had until this book, that starts developing. Or she can slow down time.
You know, that's funny because last night my son was just talking to me about how, I don't know, some class he's taken out at DAC, they're talking about superheroes.
Okay.
And about how there are actually humans on Earth that have superheroes or superpowers.
Superpowers. A lot of people think that.
And not as we would think in superhero capacity, but the fact that they can have this strength at a certain time.
Well, there's adrenaline rushes that they've
true.
talked about, people that have been able to, like, you know, there's been a car accident and they've been able to lift up the car and get their child out. And they say it's something to do with the spike in adrenaline gives you these incredible strength.
But he actually thinks that it's actually a not a club, not a gang, but a group of people that know of these powers that they have.
And they all get together and talk about it? Like the Justice League.
You know what he was talking about, you know, it was just, I'm like, okay, you know, you're 20 years old, I think we can stop the superhero stuff, you know.
I think boys never get over wanting to be a superhero, I think.
Well, I thought he was just more of a realist. I mean, I don't want to, you know, damper anybody's, you know, abilities out there if you have them, but okay.
I mean, I guess anything's possible.
I guess anything's possible. You know, there are chemicals that we don't know, the kind of reactions that they will have on people.
Turn you into Spider-Man.
You never know. Yeah, you know, I mean, and not all of those probably have the best reactions either.
Right.
I mean, sometimes having these powers can be a hindrance.
Well, like her father.
Like
it basically is driving her father insane.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what it's doing because he can't ever get peace in his head. It's just everybody's thoughts. So he has to take these suppressors, and the suppressors are basically drugs. And he has to buy these drugs, so he steals to get money for these suppressors.
I thought telepathy was that you could put your thoughts into somebody else. That's what I thought telepathy was. Is that you put your thoughts into somebody else.
That's thought projection.
Is that thought projection? I don't.
Telepathy is where you can hear other people's thoughts, and telekinesis is where you can move stuff with your thoughts.
Right.
Now, he just hears everybody's thoughts, so He has to.
That wouldn't be a good thing.
No, because
either.
it'll drive you crazy. I don't want to hear some people's thoughts.
Well,
I'll tell you
you
that
got
right
that
now.
And I wouldn't want them to hear mine either.
Yeah, they can't hear his. He can just hear theirs.
But if somebody else has that same power, now is that it? Once you have these powers, is that the only person that has them?
No, there's several people can have, like, she's called a memory eraser, and there's a couple other people in the compound that also have her ability.
Right.
So
yeah, so there's other people out there.
Then there's people in the compound that are healers that can heal people. There's people that can tell when people are lying.
And so the Facebook one, when they go on to the Future of Us or whatever that was,
right?
Each time they go on, it's a different profile of.
Well, I think it tells them more about, because they've updated the profile, see into the future, and somehow they're seeing that future, so they're able to see more pictures and more updates onto their profile that they have been making in the future.
So does that give them the ability to change?
I don't know. I haven't read this book yet. This is just one that I looked up that was similar to this, and now that I've looked it up, I want to read it. And I know Jay Asher also wrote 13 Reasons Why, which I'm sure you've heard of, is a really popular book, and he wrote this one also called The Future of Us. So it will be on my reading list. Probably you'll be seeing it soon. I want to read that one. Okay, so we will go over to Karen and her books now.
Okay, well, to stick with my theme of America, since Memorial Day is coming up in the month of May, and this week I'm doing patriotism, which is what? The feeling of goodness that you have for your country, where, you're proud to be an American, or you're proud to be a Spaniard, or you're proud to be Chinese, or whatever nationality you are. And Superhero, yeah. I don't know if they have a tree, though. I don't know. But this one is America, a Patriotic Primer by Lynn Cheney, which was the wife of Dick Cheney, I believe, who was the vice president under Bush Jr. And this is in our juvenile nonfiction. And this is a book that uses the ABCs to talk about the different symbols of America. Like F is for flag and freedom. The D was for a Declaration of Independence. And what I thought was really neat is that Z. And what they used for Z, which Z is the end of the alphabet, but it is not the end of America's story. And so just because you've come to the end doesn't mean that America is at its end. And so that was this book. The other book is Red, White, Blue, and Uncle Who. And this goes into more detail of all of America's symbolisms, like the bald eagle, how we came to use that as our emblem, how we came, what was the other one? The Liberty Bell, how the Liberty Bell was created, how we came to have the Statue of Liberty and the monuments like Washington Monument, the Korean War Monument, the Vietnam War Monument. It goes into details about the architects, about the ideas behind them, and the mall, which all these, I forget exactly the name of the mall, America Mall or something.
Mall of America?
Well, no, that's up in Minnesota.
Oh.
Which I've been to. It's very nice. Why it's called a mall when it's just a patch of grass. It's from the Capitol Hill to the Washington Monument, that patch of grass that Martin Luther King gave his speech on.
Right.
It's those patches of grass that people can have picnics on and stuff that has the Washington Monument on it, anything, or things like that. But anyway, this gives much more detail of how the monuments and how these symbols came to be, where that Mount Rushmore is in here.
Oh, that's cool.
It's really, really neat. And then this one is Dreaming of America by Eve Button. And this is based on a true story about the very first girl that was passed through Ellis Island.
Oh, cool.
And of course, the Pilgrims were the very, very first immigrants, but Ellis Island was not created at that time. But this girl, Annie Moore, she was 15 years old, where she traveled from Ireland to America. Took 12 days on a steamship. Her parents were already in America, and they had sent for the children to come once they had raised enough money. And it talks, there's a statue in her hometown in Ireland showing her, and then there's a statue at Ellis Island of her. So it shows where her journey began and where her journey ended. And when she got here to New York, since she was the first one, they gave her a $10 gold piece.
That was probably a lot
That
back
was
then.
a lot of money back then. I think, what was the year? 1892.
So I can imagine how much $10 was back then.
January 1st.
It's a lot of money.
And yeah. And so those were very, very neat books on America and how, I mean, I used to, but I need to do it more, is put the flag out. Like this book right here, The Flag We Love, it tells you about the different things that the flag, how you're supposed to take care of it. There's different ways to find the flag. Like if it's half mast, that means somebody important has passed away. If you hang it upside down, that's a distress signal.
Right. And you can't like nail it to a tree.
Yeah, you have to, if you're going to display it outside, it has to be an all-weather flag. You cannot put a regular flag out there because you are not supposed to desecrate it in any way. If it starts to show any signs of tatter or soiled, you have to take it down and replace it. At night, if you're going to fly it, you have to put a light on it. And there's just all these little rules.
I knew there was a bunch of different rules for how to fly it.
And it is unknown. A lot of people think it was Betsy Ross that made the first flag, but it is unknown, the first flag, because they have it as early as 1812 that a flag was being flown. It used to look
a lot different.
And in fact, when they they don't know why they used red, they don't know why they used white, and they don't know why they used blue. It seems to think that blue was supposed to be for the night sky. Okay. And of course, red or white is for purity.
Right.
And I think red was supposed to be for the blood that was sacrificed.
Courage or something. Yeah.
Something like that. Courage, something like that. And there was no stipulation on how the stars were supposed to be.
They've been in a circle. I've seen them in a circle.
They've been in a circle. They've been up and down in columns.
I think I've seen that
They've been up and down in columns. And then at first, before, they had done the 13 stripes, but then they thought, as we were adding stars for the states, we're going to add stripes for the states too. Well, it got to be like 22 stripes on there, and the flag was getting to be too big. Yeah.
Or make you dizzy looking at all the stripes.
And so then they decided to go back to the 13 original colonies, but there was no stipulation on the stars. They could have as many points as they wanted. They could, have hardly any points, whatever you wanted it to do. But it's very, very interesting. I think all kids should know. School kids.
Right.
The flag flown in front of the schools to let you know that school's in session. And it was actually kids who raised money to start doing that. They wanted to put a flag in front of their school. And they raised money themselves and was able to order, I forget, like 30,000 flags or something to put in front of their schools. Pennies, nickels, all that. So very, very interesting stuff. I think every kid should know why we have these emblems. I mean, what's the point? Think of the Olympics. That's the first thing you see when you go up on the platform. Is what's the first thing to let you know the country is the flag is lifted, is raised.
Right.
So it's something that I think everybody should know about.
I agree. Okay, I'm going to go to my second book now.
Okay.
And it is Asylum by Madeline Rue. Really creepy picture.
Yeah.
I have to admit that. Okay, this is about Dan. And Dan is 16 or 17, and he's going to summer school at a college, and it's like for advanced learning. And he wants to do this. He's really excited to be around. He said other kids that want to learn and not goof off. But they're working on the dorms there, so the only dorm they have available to put these kids in used to be this mental asylum that the school bought, and they are redoing it. So they have redone it, and that's what the kids are going to have to stay in, and it's called Brookline. Well, he's kind of freaked out about that. He said it still looks like an asylum, and when they go in, he meets these two friends, Jordan and Abby, a girl and a boy. They see that there's still the original office, and they've got it like boarded off, and they say no admittance, don't go in. So they decide one night that they're going to sneak down in there and see if they can get into the office. Well, they do, and they find that basically everything's just been kind of left there. They haven't got to that part yet. And they find some really creepy old pictures. And throughout this book, I don't know if I can find any, there are these weird pictures of people in mental institutions from a long time ago. And I have to admit, mental institutions from a long time ago were pretty darn creepy. Some of the practices they had back then were not, as you can see, very humane, what they did. So they find all these old records and they find these old pictures of people, and they start finding out that almost everybody that was sent to this asylum was considered homicidal, that they were all murderers or had done something really, really bad, and that I guess it was called the warden there, was trying to fix them. So he was doing lobotomies and all sorts of things to their brain to try and fix them so that they weren't evil and crazy anymore. Well, after he goes in there, and that night and from several nights, he starts having nightmares where he is the warden. And he's the one that's kind of there while they're doing these procedures. And these patients are screaming, and it's horrible. He gets so he can't sleep, and he doesn't want to tell his friends. He doesn't want them to think he's weird. Well, they're having problems of their own, and he doesn't know about, where they're also having some weird things happen. Well, then people start dying there. They have one of the, I guess it's like not a hall monitor, but I don't know what they call that, where it's like from a dorm, even a college has them. There's some sort of monitor. Mm-hmm. He gets killed, and then one of their friends gets attacked, and things just start getting worse. Well, then you find out that Dan was adopted, and his name, he kept his original name, that was Dan Crawford. When he starts finding out more research, the name of the warden was also Dan Crawford. So now he's thinking that he was related to this warden. But none of the townspeople want to talk about it. They won't tell him what happened there. They just want Brookline gone. They've got petitions to get it torn down, but the school doesn't want it. They want a national landmark, and they want to do these studies there and all of this. Things just get crazier and crazier as they start investigating. They also find out that behind the file cabinet in the room that there is tunnels that lead down under Brookline, and this is where they had illegal experiments on the patients. And they find out more and more history. I'm not going to tell you some of the things they find out, but it's creepy. And a lot of very disturbing things that's come to light. There is going to be a second book. It is called Sanction, and it will be out in August. So if you like creepy and you like ones especially about maybe hauntings and mental institutions, this is a pretty good book. And if you like books like it, a couple others that I recommend is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. The reason I have a picture of this is because we do have it, but it is out all the time. I think, Karen, you read it. I've read it. Good book. Very different.
Read the sequel, Hollow City.
Hollow City's the sequel. We do have it at the library if you can get it in, but I have not read it. Karen has. Mm-hmm. So that's one that's similar to Asylum if you like kind of creepy sort of things. Another one, this book is called Insanity. And Insanity is about a girl who works at a mental institution that's currently operating. And her and two other workers that are, I think, also teens. This is about how they start getting haunted while at this mental institution and what goes on to them there. It seemed pretty creepy to me. I thought it seemed similar to what we had talked about. And another one I have is The Unbecoming of Mara Dyer. I've been wanting to read this for a long time. There's a second one out. I can't remember. I think it's called, let's see, I've got it on a list somewhere. The Evolution of Mara Dyer. We have both of them. This is about a girl who wakes up in a hospital and finds she can't hardly remember anything, but there was an incident with her and her friends, something to do with the mental institution also, and they're all dead, and she's the only one that's alive, and she's trying to get her memories back, and she's being haunted at the same time by the friends that were killed. And it also ties into the whole mental issues and all that. So several books. If you think that that one sounded good, you might like these also.
I don't know.
Don't know where to go with that, huh?
You know, the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, you know, it was creepy enough, but I don't know if I could read that Asylum. I mean, there's many shows on TV about
where they go
people
into
going
mental
those. They have those
institutions.
ghost adventures
Yes.
and all that. No. There are just some things I don't think you mess with. But the thing is, those buildings, they take up a lot of land if you've ever seen them. I mean, there's different quarters. There's, you know, there's different degrees, I guess, of mental illness. There was a ward for children, there's a ward for the adults, and so on and so on. But to close out, I mean, that's just wasted space. I mean, I don't even know if they still even have asylums. I
Yes,
don't
they
think
do.
they still call them asylums.
I don't know if they're called, now they're usually not called asylums, no. They're called like for mental health or things like that, but it's nothing like what this was. I mean, these people, half the time, there wasn't anything really wrong with them. There sometimes were just where sometimes a husband back then would want to get rid of his wife and he would take her and say she's crazy and they'd lock her up, and if he had money, that was the end of it.
That's true.
Things
Yeah,
like that happened all
true.
the time. I mean, kids that were maybe
ADHD,
yeah, ADHD
or ADD.
something as some autism.
Yes.
You just shoved them away in these asylums and that was the end of it, because that's what society did. They didn't know what to do with these people, and they thought all these awful things, they would help them by shock treatments. And there was one called water treatments where they would shoot water at them over and over, and there was a lot of really bad things they did to these people, and it didn't help them. It just made them worse, obviously. So yeah, I mean,
yeah, if you weren't insane when you went in,
you were.
Yeah. You didn't take very long before you were insane.
And I always, it's not surprising, but when you look at like a lot of states will put out most haunted. If you look, you can look up your state and the most haunted sites. There's always mental institutions listed on those, and you can understand why. If somebody's going to come back and haunt and cannot get rest, that would be the place, because yeah, how could you get rest after something like that? And so many people died in these places.
So is that asylum, does it say anything? Is it based on a personal experience? Is it based on...
I don't think it ever says anything like that if it's based. I mean, I guess you could look up her and see where she came up with the idea, but it doesn't really say that. But I mean, lots of people died in these places, and there wasn't even records of them dying.
Right.
They just shoved you down a chute, and that was the end of it. I mean, it was mass bodies,
They wouldn't notify the family?
Sometimes there was no families. People would be dropped off.
Well, that's true.
Because they didn't want someone to know that they had someone
and
crazy in their family.
give a name that
didn't even belong.
Right.
So that happened. In the story, there is one of the patients in this asylum that they find out was a little girl who was 7 years old. And the things that they did to her, and there's pictures of her. I don't know if I can find it in here. There's even a picture of a little girl that's supposed to be the picture of this little girl. But I mean, it's just very, I can't imagine, very scary. And I can't imagine being a child.
I don't think that's a book I would read late at night.
There it is. And she's had a lobotomy. You can see the scar to her forehead. Where I don't know if you can see it, but they've operated on her head, and she kind of has that vacant look because when they took out part of her brain, let's be honest. So yeah. So kind of creepy if you like that.
Yeah, that's definitely not going to be a book for the faint of heart.
Yeah. I have to admit, it wasn't quite as bad as I thought it would be. I have to admit, it's scary and it's creepy, but it wasn't horrific. I mean,
right. But that's the thing about books. You can read about it and you conjure
I guess
stuff
it
up in your
depends
mind.
what your mind does with it. So for you, it might have been worse. I mean, if you sit there and get to thinking, and
right.
I don't know. Okay.
Okay.
So what do you have for us movie-wise?
The movies. I went on many, many, many websites to find out the most patriotic movie ever made. And from what I've gathered, it is Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And this is a movie we have here at this library. This was made in 1939. It's a political comedy drama. And this movie stars James Stewart and a lady by the name of Jean Arthur, who plays his secretary. And Jefferson Smith, who is James Stewart, is a hometown guy, and he's the leader of what was called back then the Boy Rangers, which I think was the beginning of the Boy Scouts. And come to find out, a senator in his state has passed away. And so the Senate is trying to figure out who are we going to get to replace this guy. So they go to the governor of Jefferson State, and they said, you know what, we need somebody who's just going to do what we tell them to do. We don't want anybody that's going to give us any problems. We just really want somebody to just sit in the seat until the next election. So they come up with Jefferson because the governor's kids are sitting around dinner one night and they said, oh, he's a really nice guy. He does all these great things. He would be great in Washington. So the governor says, sure, we're going to put him in Washington. And just to show you what kind of guy he was, he is a very patriotic guy. totally behind America. As soon as he gets to Washington, he sees the Capitol Dome in the background, and he leaves because he wants to go see the Capitol Dome. And unbeknownst to the people, they go to get on the train, and he's gone. They can't find him. They don't know where he is. So 4 hours later, he turns up because he had gone on a sightseeing bus. And you see him at the Lincoln Memorial, and you see him at all these places. He's just in awe that he is going to be able to represent this great, country, America. And so he gets there, but what he doesn't know is that there's some corruption in the Senate. And Jefferson wants to pass a bill where he is so into these boy rangers that he wants to set up a camp for these boys that no matter what income level you have, no matter where you come from, you can go to this camp. But the land that he wants to put it on is where these people want to put a dam. And so the trouble begins. And who he thought he could trust, which is his co-senator, who was a friend of his father's, is the one who stabs him the most in the back. And you'll have to see how it turns out, whether he gets his land or whether they get to build the dam. I tell you what, I cried from the first 5 minutes this movie started till it ended.
It's a great movie. I've seen it.
Oh my gosh.
And they couldn't have picked a better person, I don't think.
It's a tearjerker. In fact, this is what made James Stewart an actor.
And he was perfect for it, I thought.
Oh my gosh.
I love him. I've seen just about everything he's been in. So,
it was a tearjerker. I'm telling you. Have a box of Kleenex with you because it is a tearjerker. Another movie that they recommended was the movie called Dave, which has Kevin Kline in it and Sigourney Weaver. And Dave is a lookalike of the actual president. And the president suffers a heart attack while having some extracurricular activity with a coworker. And they spot Dave and ask Dave to sit in for the president. Come to find out, there's a scandal going on in the White House. Dave catches on to it when he visits a homeless shelter for kids. And his wife, Sigourney Weaver, comes to him and says, how could you pull the funding for this homeless shelter? And he says, what? And so come to find out, he finds a way to get the funding, but what he doesn't know is that the president himself was involved in this scandal, and Dave wants to put the respect back into the presidency that the scandal will leave behind when the public finds out about it. Very cute movie. It's another comedy drama. It's showing how this Dave, the lookalike, was so for his country that regardless of the scandal, he wanted to make sure that the position of president wasn't going to leave the American public tainted about the role of the president. It was pretty cute.
I haven't seen it. I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
And then I did watch the other one, even though the other one next to it, The American President, which stars Michael Douglas in it, wasn't considered a patriotic movie, but it just happens to be right next to this one because it's a 2-disc movie. Anyway, this has to do, his wife dies of cancer. And he just doesn't know if, I don't know which one it is.
It's this one over here.
Okay. He doesn't know if it's good for him to start dating. What will people think of the president? How long is long enough to mourn for his wife without bringing somebody else in? Or should he date? Is that the role of the president? Should he stay, single? Blah, blah, blah. But anyway, it's a very cute movie. You should watch it. I mean, it's not a patriotic movie, but it gives a sense of there's a lot of pressure behind being president.
Well, I would think so, yeah.
Yeah. But the one with the scandal and the one with Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, there's a lot of things that I think some senators and some people up in Capitol Hill should be watching some of these movies to realize, because this movie was considered very controversial because of how bad it painted the Senate to be.
Back then, especially.
Yeah, back in 1939.
Like
yeah. And then 2 other movies that are similar to this was, of course, Rambo 2, which has to do with the Vietnam War, where he is hired to go in and he supposedly is just supposed to take pictures to see if there's still some POWs, but we know Rambo cannot just leave things alone. Rambo when he rescues one POW that is being tortured, and when he was told that he was supposed to take pictures, he was supposed to meet at this rendezvous point in 36 hours. He goes, and they leave him because they don't want the public to know that there's still some POWs in Vietnam.
They used him.
Yeah, they used him. And of course, it doesn't take Rambo very long to figure out that he was used, and so he's going to make them pay for leaving him. And you'll have to watch and see what happens, because he does find some more POWs and he does rescue them, and then you'll have to see how he pays the government back. And another movie was Captain America, the First Avenger. Oh my goodness.
There we go.
Captain America, the First Avenger. And this has to do with a young man. He's 17 years old, and he wants to serve his country so bad, but he's very short and he's very skinny. And the government looks at him like, no. And he has asthma. And so the government's like, no, it's not going to work. Well, he's talking to his brother, and they go to like this fair-like thing, and he sees a sign where they're looking for recruits. So he thinks, well, you know what, I'm going to give it another try. Maybe these other people, I can get past these other people. They won't be as stringent as the actual recruiting place. And so he's talking to his brother about it, and this scientist-like guy overhears them, and he's wanting to do this experiment where he can inject humans with this superhuman strength, just like your movie or your books you talked about earlier.
Abilities, yeah.
Yes, abilities. And so he's going to give him, yes, this superhuman ability to do all this stuff. And so he signs up for the experiment, and he turns into Captain America. And then he has to go avenge, because there's another scientist who kind of had found about this earlier and had taken some of the drugs himself, but they didn't have the same reaction with him as they did with Captain America. And so, of course, he becomes the villain that Captain America has to go avenge America for, because this guy, of course, wants to destroy America because he's Germany. Why all the Germans get the bad raps, I don't know.
Well, it used to be Russia. There's always been a lot about Russia, too.
It had to do with World War II. The Nazis had just been defeated, and so, of course, they were trying to get, back at America for what it had done to Germany. And so, but I tell you, I think the Germans get a bad rap. But anyway, those were the top of, there was 10 of them, but those were the top 4 that I picked that were probably the most patriotic. I'm telling you, you got to watch Mr. Smith, though.
Yeah, it's good.
It is. It's very good.
Yep.
Captain America, it's a little sappy.
Yeah.
I
haven't seen it.
You haven't seen it? My daughter had seen it. She's like, oh, Mom.
I don't watch that many movies, I'll be honest. I don't.
Well, actually, they said that The Winter Soldier is actually more patriotic, but it's not out on video yet. It's still, I think, in theaters. So it's not even out on video yet. So, and of course, the Rambo ones, I have
seen the Rambo movies, yeah.
Yes. I mean, you don't have to see the very First Blood to understand the second one.
Right.
It just explains, how he ended up in prison was because of the first one.
Was there only 2? Was there 3?
I think there's 3 Rambos.
There's 3. I remember the first and the second. I don't remember the third.
And then, of course, another patriotic movie they suggested was the Rocky IV, where he's in I forget the black guy's name, Apollo. Apollo gets beaten by the Russian guy, and then he goes and fights the Russian guy, and he wears Apollo's shorts.
Yeah, that's good.
And that was the whole Cold War thing. It was America against Russia.
That was good.
And then another movie they suggested was Miracle, where the U.S. beat the hockey team.
Oh, that's good.
The Russian hockey team.
I've seen
That's another patriotic movie. It's all these feel good about America, because America defeats all these enemies of ours, whether it's not actually on the battlefield, but it's through hockey and through boxing and through sports.
Inspirational.
Well, and that's what the whole Olympics thing is.
Right.
That's supposed to make you feel patriotic too, is because when your country wins its sport and all that,
That's why they do the national anthem and
the national anthem and
your flag and all that.
All that good stuff. Yep.
Okay. Well, that is our second installment this week. So hopefully you'll keep tuning back and like what we're doing and think it's a little bit more entertaining, and you'll start getting some good ideas for some books and movies. So we will see you next week. Thanks for watching.